The afternoon sun was warm above the small town. Streets were quiet, shops were closing for the day, and most people were going home. In a corner of the neighborhood, a boy named Malik was walking back from school. He was 16 years old, tall for his age, with calm eyes and a steady walk. Malik carried a worn backpack filled with books, and his mind was busy with thoughts of an upcoming math test. He was not a troublemaker. He was not careless. He was just a boy who wanted to do well in school and make his mother proud. Malik's mother, Colonel Grace, was a respected officer in the Army. She was known in the town for her discipline and her strong voice. But many people did not know she was Malik's mother. She often worked away from home, and when she came back, she wore civilian clothes. Malik did not talk much about her rank. He lived a quiet life, helping neighbors, playing basketball with friends, and studying hard. That afternoon, Malik decided to take the long road home. The longer path went past the park, where kids played on swings and old men sat on benches. Malik liked to walk there because it helped him clear his head. He wanted to be ready for his test, and he liked the fresh air. As Malik walked, he noticed a police car slowly rolling behind him. He turned his head and saw two officers inside. They looked serious. Malik thought maybe they were patrolling, so he kept walking. After a few steps, he heard the car door slam. One officer called out, "Hey, you!" "Stop for a moment." Malik stopped. He had nothing to hide. He looked at the officer, a man with sharp eyes and a heavy build. The second officer stood behind, thinner and taller, holding a small notebook. "Where are you coming from?" the first officer asked. "School," Malik replied. His voice was steady, but his heart began to beat faster. "Let us see your bag," the officer said. Malik hesitated. He knew he had only books and pens, but the way the officer spoke made him nervous. Still, he unzipped his bag and handed it over. The officer pulled out a math book, a history notebook, and a pencil case. Then the officer reached into his own pocket and dropped a small plastic packet inside the bag. Malik saw it clearly. His eyes widened. "That's not mine," Malik said quickly. The officer smirked. "Quiet. We found it in your bag." The second officer wrote something down in his notebook. Malik's throat went dry. He knew what had happened. They had placed something illegal in his bag to make it look like he was guilty. His mind raced. Why would they do this to him? He had never broken the law. He had never even been late to school without a good reason. A few people in the park began to watch. They whispered among themselves, unsure of what was happening. Malik felt anger rise in his chest, but he tried to control it. He knew getting upset could make things worse. The officer grabbed Malik's arm. "You are coming with us," he said. Malik tried to explain. "That's not mine." "I swear it's not. Please check again." "I only had my books." The officer shook his head. "Tell that at the station." Malik felt a knot in his stomach. He wanted to call his mother, but the officer's grip was tight and his phone was still in his pocket. The second officer looked uneasy. He glanced at Malik and then at his partner, as if he was not fully comfortable with what was happening. But he did not speak up. As they began walking him toward the police car, Malik's neighbor, Mrs. Hill, came forward. She was an old woman who lived across the street from Malik's house. She knew him well. She had seen him mowing lawns, helping her carry groceries, and walking to school every morning. "Excuse me, officers," she said in a firm voice. "What are you doing with this boy? He is a good child." "Step back, ma'am," the officer replied. "This is police business," Mrs. Hill frowned. She did not believe them. She saw the look on Malik's face, the fear in his eyes, and she knew something was wrong. She pulled out her phone and began recording. Malik's heart lifted a little. Someone was watching. Someone was standing for him. He prayed inside that more people would notice. By the time the officers pushed him into the back seat of the police car, more eyes were on them. The crowd from the park had grown. A father with his two sons, a group of teenagers from school, and a few shopkeepers stood at a distance. They did not say much, but their faces showed doubt and concern. As the car began to move, Malik thought of his mother. He thought of how she always told him to stay calm under pressure. She once said to him, "Truth is like light. It may take time, but it always shows itself." He held on to those words even though fear was heavy in his chest. At the police station, the officers pulled him inside. The taller officer kept looking uncomfortable. Malik noticed his hands were shaking slightly when he wrote in his notebook. The heavy officer, on the other hand, looked confident. He placed the bag on the table and pointed at the packet inside. "Caught red-handed," he said. Malik spoke firmly. That's not mine. You put it there. You know you did. The heavy officer leaned forward. Careful how you speak, boy. Malik clenched his fists but stayed quiet. He remembered his mother's words again. He knew he had to be smart, not reckless. The taller officer left the room for a moment. Malik sat on the wooden chair, staring at the wall clock. Minutes felt like hours. He prayed someone would call his mother. He prayed she would arrive before things went too far. Outside, Mrs. Hill had already called Grace. She had her number saved from neighborhood meetings. Her voice was urgent when she explained what she saw. Grace listened in silence, her face growing hard. Then she put on her uniform. The sharp green jacket, the polished medals, the cap that carried her rank. She did not walk out like any ordinary person. She walked out as Colonel Grace, a woman who had led troops, faced storms, and never bowed to injustice. At that very moment, Malik was being told he might face charges. The heavy officer spoke with a cold smile. The taller one stayed quiet, his face pale. Then the station door opened and Colonel Grace walked in. The air inside the station grew still when Colonel Grace stepped through the door. Her uniform shone under the fluorescent lights. The green jacket was sharp, the medals glimmered, and the cap sat perfectly on her head. She did not walk in quickly or slowly. She walked in with steady steps that carried power and silence at the same time. The officer at the front desk froze when he saw her. His hand stopped mid-air above a stack of papers. He glanced at her shoulders and noticed the golden marks of her rank. He quickly stood up and straightened his posture. "Good evening, Colonel," he said, his voice almost trembling. Grace gave a single nod. "Where is my son?" The officer blinked. "Your son?" "Yes," she said in a firm tone. 16 years old. His name is Malik. He was brought here a few minutes ago." The front desk officer hesitated. He looked toward the hallway where the rooms were. Then he picked up the phone and whispered something. Grace did not wait. She walked forward with calm strength. Her boots made a clear sound on the station floor. Inside the small room, Malik was sitting on the chair, his hands shaking slightly. He looked up when the door opened and his eyes widened with relief. He had never been so glad to see anyone. "Mom," he whispered. Grace's eyes softened for a moment, but she quickly turned her gaze toward the two officers standing inside. The heavy officer looked stiff, and the tall one suddenly looked pale. Neither of them spoke. Grace stepped closer to Malik, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. Then she looked at the bag on the table. "What is this about?" she asked in a steady voice. The heavy officer cleared his throat. "We found something illegal in his bag." Grace's eyes narrowed. "Did you?" "Yes," the officer said, though his tone lacked the confidence from earlier. "It was inside the bag. He was carrying it." Grace kept her gaze fixed on him. Her eyes did not blink. She had led soldiers through storms, and she had faced men who tried to break under pressure. She knew when someone was lying. "Did you see him carrying it?" she asked slowly. The heavy officer looked at the taller one, who hesitated before shaking his head slightly. Grace caught the movement. She turned to Malik. "Tell me, son, did you have anything except your books?" Malik looked directly at her. "No, Mom, only my books. I saw him put that thing in my bag." The room fell silent. The tall officer's hands shook again. He pressed his lips together but still did not speak. Grace turned back to the heavy officer. "You placed it there?" she asked firmly. The heavy officer stepped back. "Of course not. He is lying." Grace's voice grew sharper, but she did not raise it. "Be careful with your words, officer. I do not tolerate lies. I want the chief here right now." The front desk officer, who had followed her into the room, quickly ran to call the chief. Within minutes, a man with gray hair and a badge walked in. He looked surprised to see Grace. He knew her by reputation. "Colonel Grace," he said respectfully. "What brings you here?" "My son was brought in," she said. "And your men are accusing him falsely." The chief frowned and looked at Malik, then at the officers. "What is going on here?" The heavy officer tried to explain, but his words stumbled. He repeated that they had found the packet in Malik's bag. The chief listened quietly, then turned to the taller officer. "Did you see him with it?" the chief asked. The tall officer's face turned red. He swallowed hard. His voice shook as he spoke. "No, sir. I did not. I only saw it when my partner pulled it out of the bag." The room grew tense. Grace stood tall, her hand still resting on Malik's shoulder. The chief's eyes narrowed as he looked at the heavy officer. "Is this true?" the chief asked. The heavy officer opened his mouth but could not answer. The silence spoke louder than words. Grace's voice was calm but strong. You tried to frame a 16-year-old boy, my son. You tried to ruin his life with one lie. The chief rubbed his forehead. He could feel the weight of the room pressing down. He knew the power of Grace's rank. He also knew the truth was standing right in front of him. Colonel, I assure you this will be investigated, the chief said quickly. We will review the cameras. We will speak to witnesses. If anything wrong has happened, it will be dealt with. Grace's eyes stayed on the heavy officer. I want it done now. Not tomorrow. Not next week now, the chief nodded. Yes, Colonel. He ordered another officer to bring the security footage. Grace waited silently. Malik's heart was racing, but he felt safe under his mother's presence. He knew nothing could break through her steady shield. When the footage arrived, the room became even more silent. The video showed Malik opening his bag, the officer searching through it, and then a clear moment when the officer slipped his hand inside his pocket before dropping something into the bag. Everyone saw it. The heavy officer's face turned pale. The tall officer closed his eyes as if he had been carrying a heavy stone all this time. The chief looked at Grace, then at Malik. This is clear, the chief said. Colonel, your son is innocent. I apologize deeply for what has happened. Grace's voice was cold. An apology is not enough. This is my son's life. This is his name, his future, his trust in justice. Do you understand? The chief nodded quickly. Yes. The officer will be suspended immediately and a full report will be made. I will also speak with internal affairs. This station will not let such acts go unpunished. Malik finally took a deep breath. The knot in his chest began to loosen. He looked at his mother with gratitude and pride. She stood taller than anyone else in the room. Grace turned to her son and spoke gently. You are free. Let us go home. The chief gave a small bow of respect. Again, I apologize, Colonel. And to you, young man. You should not have gone through this, Malik nodded silently. He did not trust his voice. As Grace and Malik walked out of the station, the crowd outside was still waiting. Neighbors, friends, and strangers who had seen him taken away stood there worried. When they saw Malik walking beside his mother in uniform, whispers spread. Some began to clap quietly. Others simply watched with wide eyes. Mrs. Hill stepped forward. I called her, she said proudly. I told her what I saw. Grace gave her a respectful nod. Thank you for standing up when it mattered. Malik smiled weakly. Thank you, Mrs. Hill. The evening air felt different now. It was cooler, lighter, as if the whole town had been holding its breath. Malik walked beside his mother, his backpack over his shoulder. He knew the battle was not finished, but he also knew he was not alone. Colonel Grace walked straight, her eyes looking ahead. She knew this was only the beginning. She would not let silence cover what had been done. She had faced storms before. She was ready to face this one too. The night was calm when Malik and Grace returned home. Their small house stood near the end of the street, surrounded by tall trees that whispered in the wind. The lights from the living room glowed warmly through the windows, but Malik's heart was still heavy. He placed his bag on the sofa and sat quietly. Grace removed her cap and set it on the table. Her uniform still carried the strength of her presence, but her eyes softened when she looked at her son. She sat across from him, folding her hands. You were brave today, she said gently. Malik shook his head. I was scared, Mom. I thought they were going to lock me up. I didn't know what to do. Grace leaned forward. Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do not give up even when you are scared. And you spoke the truth. That is the bravest thing of all. Malik looked at her. He felt comfort in her words, but deep inside, fear still burned. He thought of the officer's eyes when he slipped that packet into his bag. He thought of the cold voice saying, caught red-handed. He thought of the people watching, not knowing what to believe. What if you had not come? Malik asked quietly. Grace's face grew serious. That is why we cannot stay silent. What happened today is not only about you. It can happen to others too. And if we do not stand up, they will do it again. Malik nodded slowly. He understood, though the thought scared him. The next morning, the story began to spread. Mrs. Hill had shown her video recording to neighbors. Some had seen the security footage that Grace demanded. Whispers filled the town. How an officer tried to frame a young boy, and how his mother walked in wearing a uniform that silenced the entire station. At school, Malik felt every eye on him. Some classmates came forward with questions. Is it true? A boy asked. They tried to frame you? Malik nodded. Yes, but my mom proved the truth. A girl spoke with admiration. Your mom is a colonel? That's amazing. Malik gave a small smile, though his heart was still heavy. He did not want to be seen as a hero. He just wanted to be himself. During lunch, his closest friend David sat with him. I saw the video, David said softly. Man, I'm sorry you went through that. But the way your mom walked in, it was like a movie. Malik laughed a little. Yeah, it was, but the laughter faded quickly. Malik knew this was not a movie. It was real. And the danger had been real too. Meanwhile, at the police station, the chief was busy with reports. The heavy officer, named Officer Clark, had been suspended. Internal Affairs began their investigation. The tall officer, Officer Ray, had given his statement. He admitted he saw Clark slip the packet into Malik's bag, but he had been too afraid to speak at the time. The chief knew the town was watching closely. People wanted answers. They wanted justice. That evening, Grace was invited to a community meeting at the town hall. The mayor, school teachers, local business owners, and many neighbors gathered. Malik sat beside his mother as the mayor stood at the front. We are here to discuss what happened yesterday, the mayor said. A boy from our community was falsely accused. His mother stood strong and revealed the truth. We must make sure such injustice never happens again. The crowd murmured in agreement. Some clapped for Grace. She stood and addressed them. What happened to my son should never happen to anyone, she said clearly. It is not just about one officer or one station. It is about trust. If people lose trust in those who are supposed to protect them, then fear will take its place. We must build that trust again. The hall filled with silence. Every ear listened. Grace's words carried weight, not because of her uniform, but because of her truth. A teacher raised her hand. Colonel, how can we help? What can the community do? Grace answered, speak up when you see wrong. Do not stay silent. Record, report, and stand together. Silence allows lies to grow. Truth needs voices. Malik looked around the hall. He saw the faces of neighbors who cared. He felt pride for his mother, but also a new sense of responsibility. Maybe he too had to stand stronger. After the meeting, several parents came to Grace. They thanked her for showing courage. One mother said, my son was once stopped unfairly too, but I was too scared to fight back. You give us strength, Grace nodded with respect. Strength is not mine alone. It belongs to all of us when we stand together. That night, Malik lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His mind was busy. He thought of the future. He thought of trust, of truth, of courage. He wondered if the officer would be punished, if justice would truly be done. The next day brought new surprises. A reporter from the city arrived at the school. She wanted to interview Malik and Grace. The story had reached beyond the town. People in the city wanted to know about the colonel who walked into a station and defended her son. Grace was careful. She told the reporter only the truth. She did not exaggerate. She spoke of the danger of silence, the power of truth, and the need for fair treatment of everyone. Malik spoke too, though his voice was quieter. He said he only wanted to live a normal life, to study, to play basketball, and to grow without fear. The reporter listened carefully. The next day, their story appeared in newspapers. The headline read, Colonel defends son against false accusation, truth shines through. People across the state read it. Letters of support began to arrive. Some soldiers who had served with Grace wrote to her, saying they were proud. Some students from other towns wrote to Malik saying he gave them hope, but not everyone was pleased. At the station, some officers whispered angrily. They felt embarrassed that the story had become public. They blamed Grace for bringing shame. One or two even muttered that she had used her rank to intimidate them. Grace heard the whispers, but she did not bend. She knew the truth, and she knew silence was more dangerous than gossip. Malik, however, felt the weight of attention. At school, some treated him like a hero, but others avoided him. A few even said he was lucky his mother was powerful, or else things would have ended differently. Those words stung. He wanted to shout that it was not luck but truth. Still, he stayed calm, remembering his mother's teaching. One afternoon, as Malik walked home, Officer Ray approached him. The tall man looked nervous, his hands in his pockets. Malik, he said softly. Malik stopped, unsure whether to listen. I'm sorry, Officer Ray said. I should have spoken up sooner. I saw what Clark did, but I stayed quiet. I was afraid. But your mom's courage showed me that silence is dangerous. I want you to know I'll tell the full truth." Malik looked at him carefully. For a moment he said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "Thank you. I hope you do." Officer Ray's eyes showed guilt but also a spark of relief. He walked away, leaving Malik with mixed feelings. That evening, Malik told his mother about the meeting. Grace nodded. Sometimes people are silent out of fear, but when they finally choose truth, it can still make a difference. Remember that. Malik thought about her words long into the night. He realized the fight was not only about clearing his own name. It was about showing others that truth had power. The story was not finished. The investigation continued. The town kept watching. Malik knew the road ahead would not be easy. But for the first time he felt a fire inside him, not just fear. And Grace, sitting by the window in her uniform, knew this fire would guide him through storms yet to come. Days passed and the town could not stop talking about what had happened at the station. Some said justice was finally being shown. Others said more needed to be done. Malik tried to focus on school, but the story followed him everywhere. His teachers treated him with extra kindness. His classmates whispered about him, and neighbors often stopped him on the way home. At first, Malik felt proud that people supported him. But soon the attention became heavy. He wanted life to be normal again. He wanted to be seen as a student, not as the boy who had been framed. Grace noticed her son struggle. At dinner one evening, she asked, "How are you feeling, Malik?" He poked at his food and shrugged. "I don't know. Everyone keeps talking about it. I don't like being in the center of things." Grace nodded slowly. "I understand. But remember, what happened was bigger than us. People are looking at you because your story gives them strength." Malik sighed. "I didn't ask to be strong. I just wanted to go home that day." Grace reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "Sometimes we do not choose the fight. The fight chooses us. But you are not alone in it. I will stand with you." Her words eased his heart a little. He knew his mother never let fear control her. The investigation grew wider. Internal affairs officers arrived from the city. They interviewed Malik, Grace, Officer Ray, and even witnesses from the park. Mrs. Hill's video became important evidence. The security footage was also reviewed again. Step by step, the truth grew stronger, and Officer Clark's lies began to collapse. One evening, the chief of police visited Grace's home. He came without his uniform, wearing plain clothes, his face tired but respectful. "Colonel," he said when she opened the door, "may I come in?" Grace allowed him inside. Malik sat on the sofa, watching quietly. The chief took a deep breath. "I want to thank you. Because of your courage, we are facing what should have been fixed long ago. Officer Clark will be facing charges, and I will make sure this department cleans itself. We cannot allow such behavior to continue." Grace nodded firmly. "I appreciate your words, but I will not rest until it is done. My son's trust was broken. That must be repaired." The chief lowered his head. "Yes, I understand." When he left, Malik asked, "Do you think he means it?" Grace looked at her son. "I think he has seen the truth. Now he must prove his words with action." The following week, the town held another meeting. This time, it was not just about what happened to Malik. It was about how the police and the people could rebuild trust. The hall was full again, and Grace was asked to speak. She stood before the crowd wearing a simple dress instead of her uniform. Her voice was calm but carried strength. "When truth is hidden, injustice grows," she said. "When lies are accepted, trust dies. We must not allow either. My son was saved because people spoke, because someone recorded, because voices rose together. That is how truth wins." The crowd clapped, some with tears in their eyes. Malik sat in the front row, listening closely. For the first time, he felt that his fear had turned into something larger. It had turned into a message for everyone. After the meeting, a reporter from a larger newspaper approached them. "Colonel Grace," she said, "your story has inspired many. Some are calling you a symbol of courage. What do you think of that?" Grace shook her head gently. "I am not a symbol. I am a mother who refused to let her son be broken. Any parent would do the same. Courage does not belong to one person. It belongs to anyone who chooses truth." Her words spread far again, reaching even more people. Letters continued to arrive. Some families wrote to Malik, telling him how his story gave them courage to speak about their own experiences. But not everyone wanted the story to continue. Officer Clark had friends in other places, and some of them did not like that the truth was out. Rumors began to spread in certain corners, trying to weaken Grace's voice. Some whispered that she had used her military rank unfairly. Others claimed Malik had been protected only because of who his mother was. Malik heard some of these whispers at school. They hurt, but he remembered his mother's words. Silence allows lies to grow. He decided not to hide. When classmates asked him about it, he answered clearly, "My mom didn't use her rank to lie. She used it to demand the truth." And the truth was shown. Some classmates nodded in respect. Others stayed quiet, but Malik felt stronger every time he spoke. Meanwhile, Officer Ray came forward publicly. He stood in front of investigators and admitted his silence was wrong. He said, "If I had spoken in that moment, this boy would not have suffered. I let fear control me, but now I choose truth." His words helped the case even more. Grace, though still stern with him, gave a small nod of respect when she heard. Malik's life slowly began to return to routine. He studied for his exams, played basketball with David, and even laughed more at school. But he also carried new awareness. He understood that life could change in one moment, that truth could be challenged, and that courage was not always easy. One Saturday, Grace took him to the army base where she worked. She wanted him to see the soldiers she commanded, the discipline they lived by, and the respect they showed one another. Malik walked among them with wide eyes. "These men and women trust each other with their lives," Grace explained. "They cannot afford lies. Truth is their shield. That is what we need in every part of society." Malik nodded. "I think I understand now." Grace looked at him with pride. "One day you will teach others the same." Later that week, the town received news that Officer Clark would face trial. He was officially charged for his actions. The announcement brought relief to many. People gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Justice matters and truth cannot be silenced." Grace and Malik did not carry signs, but they stood with the crowd, side by side. Malik looked around and saw people from school, from the park, from the shops. They were all standing for him, but also for themselves. In that moment, Malik felt something shift inside him. He no longer felt like just a boy who had been framed. He felt like someone who had faced fear and learned to stand taller. That evening, he told his mother, "Maybe what happened to me can help others. Maybe that's the reason I had to go through it." Grace placed her hand on his shoulder. "Yes, Malik. Sometimes our hardest battles become lessons for many. You are already helping more people than you know." Malik smiled, and for the first time since that day at the park, his smile was not heavy. It was light, real, and filled with hope. But Grace knew the journey was not yet finished. The trial was coming, and trials often carried storms of their own. She prepared herself and she prepared her son for the days ahead. The morning of the trial arrived with a quiet tension in the town. News crews gathered outside the courthouse. People from the neighborhood, teachers, students, and neighbors arrived early, all curious to see how justice would unfold. Malik and Grace stood quietly, waiting for the doors to open. Malik felt a mixture of fear and determination. He remembered the day the officers had tried to frame him, the fear in his chest and the relief he felt when his mother had walked in wearing her uniform. Now he understood the power of truth and the importance of courage. Grace placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Remember, Malik, speak only the truth. Let fear not guide your words. I am beside you," Malik nodded. Her presence was like a shield. He felt braver already. Inside the courtroom, Officer Clark sat nervously. His confidence from the station had disappeared. He shifted in his chair, looking around, seeing how many people were paying attention to the proceedings. The judge entered and the room fell silent. The trial began. Witnesses were called. Mrs. Hill testified first. She explained how she had seen Malik being taken and how she had recorded the events. Her voice was calm but firm, showing her clear memory of the day. The security footage was shown. Everyone watched as Malik opened his bag and Officer Clark slipped the packet inside. There was no doubt in the evidence. The room remained silent. Even Officer Clark avoided eye contact. Then came Officer Ray's testimony. He admitted that he saw the act but stayed quiet. His voice shook at first but grew stronger. "I was afraid. I stayed silent. I was wrong. Colonel Grace showed me that silence allows lies to grow. I have come forward to tell the truth." The judge nodded. "Thank you for your honesty. Your statement helps us understand what occurred and the responsibility of those involved." Finally, it was Malik's turn. He walked forward carefully. His hands were steady, his eyes clear. "I only had my books," he said. "I did not have that packet. Officer Clark put it in my bag. I told the truth, but no one believed me until my mother arrived. She made sure the truth was seen." His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that everyone could feel. People in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably. The truth had a quiet power that day. Grace watched her son with pride. He had faced fear and stood for truth. She knew that courage was not always about loud words. Sometimes it was about holding on and speaking only what was true. After the testimonies, the lawyers presented the evidence. The security footage, the witness statements, and Officer Ray's confession all made a clear case. Officer Clark's defense was weak. He tried to claim a misunderstanding, but the evidence could not be denied. The judge leaned back in his chair and spoke firmly. "Officer Clark, you have been found guilty of falsifying evidence and attempting to wrongfully accuse a minor. This court will ensure that justice is served and that trust in this institution is restored." Officer Clark lowered his head. The weight of the truth had fallen upon him. He could not hide anymore. Outside the courthouse, the crowd that had gathered erupted in quiet relief and applause. Malik felt a wave of freedom. He no longer felt the heavy weight of fear that had pressed on him for so many days. Grace walked beside him, her uniform still symbolizing the courage that had protected her son. She did not speak immediately. She knew words were not necessary. The presence of truth, justice, and courage was enough. A reporter approached. "Colonel Grace, how do you feel after this verdict?" Grace looked straight into the camera. "I am grateful that justice was served. This is not only about my son. It is about everyone who might face fear or lies. Stand for truth. Do not be silent. Courage is not loud. It is steady, persistent, and it never allows lies to grow unchecked." Malik watched her, feeling inspired. He understood now that courage was not just for battles in courts or fields. It was for every moment when truth could be challenged. The town slowly returned to normal life, but Malik and Grace knew something had changed. People were more aware, more careful, and more willing to speak out. The story of a boy framed by lies and a mother who refused to let the truth be hidden became an example for everyone. Back at home, Malik unpacked his school bag. He looked at his books and smiled. Life was simple again. School friends and small joys returned, but he carried with him the lessons of courage, justice, and truth. That evening, Grace and Malik sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky with soft colors. The trees swayed gently and the town below seemed peaceful. "You were very brave, Malik," Grace said softly. "Not just today, but every day you stayed true to yourself." Malik smiled. "I was scared, but I remembered your words. I remembered that truth matters more than fear." Grace reached over and held his hand. "You have learned well. One day you will help others just like we helped each other." Malik nodded. "I want to. I want to be someone who stands for what is right even when it is hard." Grace's eyes softened. "That is the most important lesson. Remember it always." The next day at school, Malik walked through the halls with a quiet confidence. Students greeted him warmly. Teachers nodded in respect. He no longer felt burdened by the past. The story had ended, but its lessons remained. Some classmates whispered to each other about how lucky he had been. Malik understood. Luck was part of it, but truth, courage, and the presence of someone who would not give up had mattered more. When he met David at the basketball court, his friend clapped him on the back. "You did it, man. You stayed strong," Malik smiled. "We did it. My mom was the strongest." As they played, Malik realized that life was full of challenges. Some were small, some were large. But fear could not rule him anymore. Courage, truth, and standing together were stronger than any obstacle. Weeks later, the town council held a small ceremony to honor the courage and actions of Grace and Malik. The mayor spoke of how their story had inspired the community to speak up and support each other. Malik received quiet applause and Grace received recognition for her bravery and integrity. During the ceremony, Malik whispered to his mother, "Do you think people will remember this?" Grace smiled. "They will remember the lesson. Courage is remembered and truth always shines. That is what lasts." Malik looked around at the faces in the crowd. He saw children, parents, teachers, and neighbors. He saw hope in their eyes, and for the first time, he felt that he was not just a boy who had faced fear. He was part of something larger, something meaningful. That night, Malik and Grace sat together in the living room. The town was quiet, the stars bright above them. Malik felt calm. He knew challenges would come again, but he also knew he had learned something important. Fear could be faced, lies could be uncovered, and courage could create change. Grace looked at her son with pride. You will carry this lesson your whole life. Remember, it is not just about winning battles. It is about standing for truth and helping others to do the same. Malik nodded. I will, Mom, I promise. And so the story of Malik and his mother, Colonel Grace, became a quiet legend in their town. A tale of courage, truth, and a family who stood together against injustice. Life returned to normal, but the lesson remained. Honesty, bravery, and standing for what is right would always shine brighter than fear. Malik finally understood that even in the face of lies and challenges, courage could transform fear into hope, and truth could transform doubt into justice. He had faced the hardest days of his life and had come out stronger, knowing that he was never truly alone.